Welcome to Season 13 of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast. This is where we connect with experts in the field, patients who use these devices, physical therapists, and the vendors who help bring it all together. Our mission remains the same, to share stories, tips, and insights that help improve patient outcomes. Tune in and join the conversation. We're glad you're here and hope it's the highlight of your day.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joris Peels, and this is another episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast with Brent Wright. How are you doing, Brent?
Hey, Joris. I'm doing well. I have bit the AI bug pretty hard. And so I got into OpenClaw, and I learned that tokens cost a lot of money.
Also, yes.
I think I spent probably $75 over the course of not even a full day, 24 hours. I was working it. And then I found out that you can do different LLMs and that sort of thing to watch your costs. But here's the crazy thing. So not that it's going to be used, but with OpenClaw, you set up everything on a Discord server and you've got different bots talking to each other, whatever. So, and my son plays baseball in college. Mm-hmm. And I was at one of their games and they literally have somebody tracking pitches on a piece of paper. And I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. So I literally, in one of my researcher channels that has the programming agent or whatever, I said, hey, I want this. I want to be able to track pitches, and then I want statistics after that. And then I want to be able to download that as either a text file or an Excel file. And literally 15 minutes later, it had the website up and going, mobile friendly, so somebody could run it on an iPad or an iPhone. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's. I've been a long AI skeptic person, but I learned from a lot of really good developers how they've gone like 30 times faster in like only a couple of months. And I'm playing around with the cursor and stuff like this as well, trying to see like, if I can like build websites or apps, or to what extent and stuff like that. And it's kind of insane actually how quickly this is developing. And I really don't think we'll understand the effects of this until they hit us. I think it's really crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with somebody that's actually been on this podcast before, who is well into the software side of things. And they said it's unbelievable. And they were already an unbelievable programmer and developer. Mm-hmm. And it is accelerating their development timelines by leaps and bounds, exponentially. Mm-hmm. And that is crazy. I think the other thing that's crazy is the ability to get the real-time information, and then, you kind of scrub it. So for instance, my wife's in real estate, and she was like, I've got this one client. They're very, very particular about where they want to be, what kind of house they want. And I was like, just put it into my OpenClaw and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And literally 4 houses showed up inside of that within a matter of seconds. And she's actually going to be probably showing one of them here shortly. But it's just a matter of how it compiles all that data so fast and then discards what you don't need and distills it to what you do need. And it's wild. So I was definitely a big time skeptic, but now that I'm in it, I'm like, wow. And the other thing is I had an email that I don't use a lot of. So I was like, okay, so what if I just let it like actually go through my email, put stuff into folders, delete the spam. It was unbelievable. All nicely organized, inbox 0, which I never have. And it's amazing. So crazy times.
Awesome. I think we need to maybe devote an episode to that at one point to try to figure out what it could mean for everyone, what's actually real or what's definitely going to be real. But it's a very, very exciting kind of development generally, I think. All right. Okay, so do we have a guest today?
We do. And I'm really excited to have Danielle Robins on the show today. She's a certified prosthetist and orthotist. But one of the things that's very interesting is that she does it mostly for pets, or actually all for pets right now, it appears. And or it might be a side hustle. We're gonna find out some of that stuff. But she is also active on LinkedIn with these furry friends, And it looks like big dogs, little dogs, pretty much anything that you need in the vet space she has experience with. So I'm really excited to dive into that, what her journey was, and then maybe we can talk about some fabrication towards the end.
Awesome. So welcome to the show, Danny. So tell us, how did you get involved with O&P?
Hi. Well, thanks for having me. O&P kind of fell into my lap. I was originally planning on going to physical therapy school and was doing my thousands of hours of shadowing for that. And it was in the last, I kid you not, maybe 10 hours of the 1,000 hours I had to shadow that I saw a prosthetist in the PT clinic. I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? Like, that is so cool. They're on their hands and knees. Their scrub knees are torn up because they're just on the floor and fiddling with the alignment. I'm like, I like that. So I fell into it like that and immediately started applying to O&P schools. My dad is a doctor. My mom is a sculptor. So I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is the best of two worlds over here. And I really enjoyed it. You know, my heart's always been in the place of helping people and trying to make their lives better. Growing up with a special needs brother, it's kind of a real soft spot for me. You know, the animal thing was just such a small butterfly effect. I guess it was a big butterfly effect, but my dog hurt her knees a few years ago, probably 5-6 years ago now. And I was like, oh my God, there's all of the other species. Like, all of the other species are not humans. Like, who's helping those ones? And that's kind of how I fell into this. I've had a very interesting journey. And until recently, I was working with both animals and humans, but now it's just animals. And I think that's a blessing because it makes me happy. And there's not a lot of people that do it. And it's, you know, I get a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn and otherwise, a lot of CPOs saying, how did you do that? Like, how did you get out of humans or at least add animals to your practice? And the truth is, it's luck and a lot of benediction in that because it's a very interesting small field.
So is that? I mean, give us an idea. Well, first of all, is it your passion? You were just like, oh my God, I can help pets. This is literally what drove this for you, or? Yeah.
So like I said, I never thought about doing it for animals. Like, in my head, it was just, you know, you make braces and prosthetics for humans and that's what it is. But I grew up as an equestrian. I've always been an animal lover. And then my own personal dog got hurt. And I was like, I can't afford this $10,000 surgery. She's a 100-pound dog. I can't carry her upstairs for 6 weeks if she has a surgery. You know, like, I have to do something. Come to find out, that's the bread and butter of animal O&P is doing knee braces for dogs called a stifle. And their ACL injuries are the main thing. You know, in the beginning, when I started doing this, it was about 80% stifle bracing. And since then, it's branched out to crazy prosthetic cases and congenital cases and cows and goats and horses and, you know, really anything with more than 2 legs. It's pretty awesome.
Okay, cool. So no kangaroos. Okay. All right.
One reached out.
What?
Yeah, I was like, this is impossible, though. I can't make you like a springy leg for a kangaroo. But
wouldn't it be like one of those carbon fiber ones? That'd be great. That'd be dangerous, I think.
Kind of.
That would be amazing.
I know. I thought about it, but they stand at like 90 degrees on their ankle. So it's like, Are you going to make that? So yeah, there's a lot of imagination, a lot of practicality that goes into it. Unfortunately, it's like, you're going to be the highest bouncing kangaroo in the world.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no.
And talk to us about, like you said, the field was small. Do you have any idea how many people are doing this, or is there like, do you have any idea if it's like it's literally a niche within a niche, or do you have any idea at all?
It's a very niche in a niche. This is very much a guess, but I would say full-time people doing it, I would say 1 to 2 dozen in the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very small, and people doing it full-time is usually even less unless they're running their own companies or teaching in like veterinary hospitals. You know, somehow became lucky enough to become one of those people, but it's very small. And most of the people within that, you know, started as prosthetists and or like veterinary technicians. So they were around animals, but the main niche that this falls in is veterinary rehab. So if you imagine in the human landscape, if physical therapists were responsible for doing everything and process orthotists were just on the other side of the phone, that's what a lot of this is. So it's a very different dynamic.
And to get into this, did you need to do courses? Because it could be like, if you're a veterinarian, do you do this on the side? Do they do this on the side normally? How does it normally work?
That's a good question. And the answer is there needs to be a better way for it. But what is currently done is in some of these higher level veterinary rehab programs specifically, not necessarily even like surgeons or orthopedics. Usually in the rehab courses that these veterinarians take, They might get a couple days if they're lucky about training for O&P. So it's just like very much a crash course. Like this is a ground reaction force. This is, a brace versus a prosthesis. And the ones that know more are usually from years and years of experience. And some of these manufacturers, would have in-person classes where these veterinarians would fly in, take, condensed 2 or 3 day class. And then pretty much they'd say, good luck, you're on your own and we're kind of here if you need us. To date right now, there's no actual certification for it, which is a little bit scary, both on the human side and the veterinary side. Like there's nothing at this time where you can take it and you're like, you are certified in veterinary O&P, which leads to a lot of poor outcomes, both from the manufacturing side and the O&P side, because it's extremely different. Like, you could be a wonderful human, that's what I call it, a human orthotist prosthetist, and be clueless in animals because it's so different. So part of what I'm working on, and it's probably going to be the end of the year, but I am working on some sort of certification because I have so many people reach out to me just to give them the basics of animal O&P, because otherwise it's about impossible to get into. So
that sounds like a good idea to have a baseline, right? Some kind of baseline. And if we're talking about first off, it seems to be very much like the companion animals, furry animals in the home, kind of like the cute pets is like really mainly the group, right? That comes to.
Yeah, that would definitely be the main group. Like I said, there's the occasional cow or horse or goats or sheep or like bulls, but like the people that want to spend the money on that are few and far between, and the people that have those animals are much fewer and far between. So, there's a lot more dogs out there that need like basic orthopedic surgeries and devices than there are kangaroos or monkeys or sea turtles, stuff like that. Like there's a lot you can do, but just volume wise, yeah, it is absolutely probably 95% dogs. Even, I've done more cows than I have cats.
That's kind of crazy. That explain that, because there's a lot of cats as pets, right? So explain that to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of cats as pets, but the thing with cats is, their attitude, like even the sweet
cats evil?
Are like,
no,
I didn't say it. But a cat, you could do a perfect device for, and they're just like, how dare you put this on me? Like, I don't like you. Like, how dare you, owner, for trying to help me? Yeah. So the acceptance for cats tends to be lower, and they're so much more reliant on their paws and their claws, that having anything enclosed on those, like they don't like that, and they tend to do better. Like if they have to, they tend to do better on 3 legs than dogs do. So really just like the audacity of the practitioner trying to help them is the reason we don't really do cats too much.
Okay, sounds very cat-like, yes.
Yeah, very much.
Sounds perfect.
Yoris, we're going to lose more listeners over this cat stuff than any other...
Cats are amazing.
Cats
are wonderful. We should do more to increase O&P acceptance with cats.
I agree. Inclusion.
Anyway, and then one thing that really intrigues me is, if you see, there seems to be the main problem seems to be like kind of a leg missing kind of thing. Is that like a cancer, accidents? What are the causes for these animals coming to you in the first place?
I would say probably 25% of the animals I see are for prosthetic cases. And we'll get into why those are a little more difficult, other than it being a prosthesis later. But most of the like orthotic device reasons are torn ligaments, or in lieu of like fusion surgeries. So when you go in to do like a wrist fusion, like there are a whole bunch of tiny little bones there. They're in external fixators, they're hairy. You can't tell them what to do. You can't tell them not to lick. So a lot of times, like other than the cost, like a brace is just a more realistic version, especially if they're attending like a rehab with, a trained veterinarian. Like they'll learn to walk properly. Like if it's an Achilles thing and they've had a partial tear, like they can have PRP and shockwave and use the devices like slowly dynamize over time, instead of, going in for that $10,000 surgery that probably will fail if they're not doing proper aftercare. So on the orthotic side, it's more, can we avoid surgery? Like, is it a good idea to? Some animals can't have surgery. It's expensive. They can be older, variety of reasons. So that's kind of where it started, orthotic wise, for the animals. And then prosthetic wise, it's very interesting for me, being namely like a human O&P practitioner. For animals, the standard is if something's wrong with the leg, cut the whole leg off. is wild to me. Imagine being a human and your big toe needs to go, and then they're like, no, we're just going to take a whole leg. That's kind of been the standard in veterinary O&P, and it's starting to change. But it starts with more education on the veterinary side because, like I said, most of them aren't taught really anything about it, and it's not their fault. It's just the way that the system is right now. But the prosthetic cases I get are usually from a handful of surgeons or rehab veterinarians, kind of like a specialist community that come together and talk about where this amputation should take place on the limb so that we have enough to do a partial limb prosthesis. So when I get to do that, it's usually a big kind of collaboration, or it was a congenital case, which I'd say of the prosthetics currently, that's probably about half of them. But yeah, the prosthetics are very fun, but you got to think about it with animals. Like, not only are they the widest variety of sizes and conformations of any species, there's so many veterinarians that are working on them that it's hard to get this idea in everybody's head to make that work. But there's nothing to keep these things on. Like, they don't wear shoes. Like, how do you keep something on a dog? And that's part of where it gets difficult. So for prosthetics, there are certain limitations of what we can do. And if they're not going to fit in that category, I will tell the vet, go ahead, just take the whole thing. But it works really well when we get to do that.
And I have a crazy idea, but I just thought of this. There's this thing called bittering agents. There's one called Bite-Trex or something. And you put it on stuff. They put it sometimes on cleaning things, other things where they want kids to not put it in their mouths. And it tastes horrible. That's the idea, so the kid doesn't eat it. Can you put that on the prosthetics to keep the dog from licking it, or the wound, or the area? Or it's a crazy idea.
They make a few things. There's one that I like to recommend called a sour apple bitter spray. Huh? And it's essentially the same thing, but I think that you might underestimate the desire for the dogs to do this sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't understand. That's the thing. It's not hey, this is gonna. Yeah. Usually, once they figure out, hey, this thing helps me, I'm not gonna eat it. This is a very expensive chew toy, but until that point, yeah, you definitely have to keep an eye on it. There's a break-in period for all these things. It's not something they wear overnight usually, but yeah, it's in my contract that if your dog chews it, I'm very sorry, you have a very expensive chew toy. It's not something that I can.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah.
And another thing is, I see leg type based prosthetics, and other times I see kind of wheels. Does that work? Is that a good idea? It seems quite practical. I've seen dogs walk quite quickly with these kind of little wheel things on the back, right?
Yeah, like a wheelchair, like a cart.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, those are fantastic. When I was with my previous business, we were doing those as well. We were working with a company called, if anyone ever needs it, Eddie's Wheels is fantastic. They make custom wheelchairs for dogs. They do front and back wheels. And I would use this a lot for, you get your long spined breeds or those that have had accidents and are paralyzed in the hind end, or, have super bad hips or super bad knees. You can use those. I've used them for dogs that have no front legs, no back legs. So the wheels definitely come in handy, especially when there's not enough limb or control to use an orthotic or prosthetic device.
And given that there's so few people practicing this, first off, do the people come from all over the country to visit you? Is that how that works? Or?
Very interesting kind of place in this niche. So I started out of my car, and I'm in the Tampa area. So, I drive all around here, St. Petersburg, all the way out to Orlando or so. So about a 2-hour radius when I was starting, just telling vets hi, I know that you might need the service, but you're probably, in a nice way, but you're probably not trained in this. I am if you have something, let me know and I will come in and take care of it for you. So for the first probably year and a half of my animal journey, it was just me traveling around kind of as a on-call basis. I then had a company called Orthopause that I started that I recently left. And the idea with Orthopause is, okay, cool. Now we have a storefront. People are going to come to us. And something big happened inside of the veterinary O&P market. One of the biggest, pretty much the founding company of veterinary O&P called Orthopets closed down pretty much with no warning. People's devices were in the middle of that. And that created a really big opportunity because Orthopets is one manufacturer. They're in Colorado. They were fantastic. And they had almost a cult-like following. So when they closed, everyone's oh my God, who do I go to? What do I do? And my name came up. So a lot of what I do now, I'd say 10% of what I do is actually in person. The other 90% has turned into virtual consulting and guiding the vets through this. So I'll be there to help them do the evaluation, to help them do the casting, through the computer. They're having a fit problem. Okay, try X, Y, and Z. So I'm It's a very awesome job because I work with vets in Australia and Canada and the UK. And, of course it gets a little harder if they need a modification, if they're not trained in that, but, I can guide them through simple heat flares. But I think I call myself like a veterinary orthotist on demand. Like that's kind of been my selling point for these veterinarians, because the non-local ones, like I said, since there's so little training in this, they would get a device and just kind of be expected to figure it out on their own. And that's about impossible. Even like it's about impossible without any formal training. And even with the training, like animals are hard. So,
wow.
And then normally we're looking at cast and plaster and scanning. That also seems like it's not great with like a furry creature, right?
It's harder. Fiberglass is the way to go, but you're going to be using either a cotton stockinette over the limb and or some press and seal. So people always love when you put press and seal over their dog. Like that's always fun. So I'll take a fiberglass impression with press and seal, cut strip, and then I'll take a 3D scan of that and have it digitally modified and made that way.
So,
and can you get those people overseas to do that, or does that not work? You can't get information back from them really at that level.
I just use Comb O&P, and some of my international clients, I'll just have them download Comb, even if it's just a 10-day trial, and if they like it, they can buy it, and then they can just scan it into me. That'll save them a couple weeks of shipping and a couple $100. So that is an option for them. Most of my clients just send me the cast, and then I will do everything. But that is an option for them, because ultimately it ends up being digitally modified and carved out and then made more traditionally after that. But that's been a way to integrate.
I think this is an interesting approach, because we're in the I don't know what we call it, the human O&P world, right? We don't really see this kind of fabrication with a contact thing that much. And it looks like it's a really gratifying niche. And imagine doing something in the regular O&P world where you would just interface with certain people, like not just doing fabrication, but doing more fabrication consulting for very specific cases. That seems like it could be something that could be a very interesting thing for certain people to really specialize in, if they're in really specific stuff, if that, in the rest of the world as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I mean, I prefer working with animals to humans. So getting to help the veterinarians do that, and just, there are people out there that know more than I do. Like I've been doing this 5 or 6 years for the animals. Like there are people that have been doing it for 20 years, but what we know is different. And there's a time and a place for everything. So I've seen quite a lot. And, for things that I don't know, I have some great advisors that I can speak to, but it's definitely nice to be not quite a liaison, but like a consultant. Like you said, this is all I do now. So any weird dog, cat, goat, cow, horse stuff, I'm sure something else will come about, but yeah, very much the consulting side. When I was younger in the O&P field, I thought it'd be really interesting to do this for, like human physical therapists, like help them if they wanted to do an AFO. This is what you should do. Let's consider this type. Do these kind of range of motion tests. I never thought I'd fall into that in the veterinary world, but here we are.
Yeah, and then another thing is that if you look at this, one thing that still intrigues me is just this big company, all of a sudden the leader of the field, also out of nowhere went out of business. That doesn't look like, there's a great solid financial underpinning for this, right? Or is it too niche to really be very profitable, or is it just too niche for there to be a lot of suppliers, or was that just it could have been an event as well related to that company?
Question for this company. Like I said, it was called Orthopets. It was owned by Dossier, who does the wood cast materials. I think they just partnered with OSER to do some different casting systems in the hospitals, but that main company went bankrupt, and Orthopets was just, a consequence of that.
Okay.
There are very few companies that do this, and the ones that do it usually do all their own fabrication, like it's their main focus, their bread and butter. Actually, that's not true. I'd say probably half the companies doing this, it's their only thing, their main bread and butter. A lot of them work out of like human O&P labs, and then a lot of people in the field are, humans 3 days a week, animals 2 days a week, pay for your own supplies, use their lab. Like there aren't too many standalone things. And the people that ask me, like the CPOs that ask me, like, I would love to do animals. How do I do it? I say, you have to get very lucky if you want to do it full time. It's a great side gig at the very least for human O&Ps that want to get into it. But to do it full time, you really got to find your niche. You got to be in academia or working directly with a fabrication company or running the fabrication and design of that. So, anyone wanting to do it full time, let me know how you figured it out, because I fell into it.
And if you're looking at this kind of like a large part of this seems to be like marketing, right? Or was that also just luck? Or are you really like saying, Because people from all the world find you. That's nice. Could happen as a coincidence. It's not going to keep happening as a coincidence, right?
So I've thought about this in a couple different ways. And what's really stuck is kind of luck. But once you get your foot into the inner circle, the people that do veterinary O&P, like the CPOs, is a very small group. The veterinarians that do this is also fairly small. Like they are specialists within the veterinary field, and the ones that do bracing are like even more specialists within that specialist field. Most of what's happened for me has just been word of mouth. And that's been really nice. But I figured out fairly early on like what was missing in the field. And it's not so much like there's no good devices out there, it's that no one can explain to them what they're doing. Exopets, my company, focuses, of course, on good designs and getting products that work and all of that stuff. But the main thing that I really, really kind of focus on is making sure the veterinarians understand what they're doing. So they're not deers in a headlight when something doesn't work. And the pet parent's staring at them like, why did I just spend $2,000 on this? And they're like, I have no idea. Like, I make sure to never put them in that situation. So I think that's gone really far with the veterinarians. 90% of my business has just been, oh, I work with Danny. Just here's her website, which is really nice because I am 100% a clinician at heart. Like I don't know how to do professional marketing. I don't know how to do any of that, nor do I really have the budget to do that. So I've just gone through word of mouth, doing a good job, taking the time. And since I work with people all across the world, like I don't really have any, like I'm always on call, essentially. Like if someone needs to call me at 6 p.m. and they're in Oregon and I'm in Florida, like I will answer the phone at 9 o'clock at night just to make sure. Because like I said, if I'm not there to help them, they might as well go with someone else. So that's been how I've grown in the field. Consistency is one thing, making sure people are familiar with things in an unfamiliar field. That's been the way to go, which is really nice because that's all I know how to do. So it worked.
So is it true though, in the O&P, especially in this bracing side of things, and what you said about orthopeds was super interesting. Like I just Googled it and I was like, wow, okay, yeah. So I mean, it did leave a lot of people in a lurch.
Oh yeah.
So, and we'll have to have some offline stories about that because it's really, really interesting. But, do you find that it's like your people, when you say, people that if you're either stumped or you have a question that you call, do you find that that's a regional? Is it across the country? Because what I have heard, and because we 3D print stuff for multiple people, is that there's not necessarily a lot of sharing of knowledge.
No.
Within this.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Understatement. Yeah, it is. It is a very guarded field. I think part of it is, there's a quote unquote like smaller market because it's not as common. Going through your $250,000 master's program, you get, if you're lucky, half a day on animals. Like there's not a whole lot that you can learn. So I got very lucky. I was trained by the original founder of Orthopets prior to going out of business. Like I got to go do hands-on training with them and cast dogs and kind of a crash course. And I still maintain a good relationship with him. But that's the only way that I was able to even feel comfortable saying that I do this without feeling like a fraud. So my goal now, the landscape has changed a little bit. Like I said, after Orthopets closed, there's different ways to access fabrication, but the guarding of knowledge is, one of the main barriers, because this isn't really, to my knowledge, not really taught in schools as its own subject. Veterinarians get a day or two, and the companies don't want to share their knowledge because it's their bread and butter. Once you know things, you can make things. You're using the same tools. You're using, Polypro, Copoly, Aliplast, Velcro. There's nothing inherently incredible about the animal manufacturing other than understanding how completely different it is. Because if you imagine, like, I tell my veterinarians all the time, because they sometimes get a little not upset, but frustrated that they don't quite understand. I'm like, dude, like, do not worry about it, because humans are straight up and down. Like, when we are analyzing human forces, like, we're toothpicks. Like, have you seen a German Shepherd? Like, they're sitting at 90 degrees, 60 degrees. Like, it's crazy ground reaction forces. So how do you teach that to someone when they're in a master's program trying to learn about, bipedal locomotion? We're like, oh, we're just going to double that and change everything. So it really, like, in order for it to become mainstream and to not have the guarding of knowledge, the O&P schools would really need to have like at least a 6-week course for people to feel confident going through this, because all the rehab modalities are different too. So like I said, I'm trying to make some sort of certification or just knowledge base to get people to get their foot in the door. Because I think, I'm a business person to some extent, but also like the whole point of this is for the animals. Like I think the animals deserve the same kind of care as humans, and that requires people that know what they're doing. So yeah, there's, like you said, there's a very big and it's not a secret, like a very big barrier of knowledge, because once you know what to do, what's to stop you from making your own brand? And that's just not a good business move. So,
right.
There's a in between somewhere that hasn't really been explored.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, and I think yours and I kind of follow that too, is competition is a good thing because it rises and brings awareness around for this field. And it also helps differentiate you from somebody else that may be doing it. So I think that's an interesting way to put it. And I love the idea of certification for that. I'd love to dive in. So you mentioned you are less, would you say that, are you on the fabrication side of making the braces that you're also in on the consulting side of things? Or are you helping them be able to make that internally? How does that usually work?
Good question. So I very much serve as like a traditional CPO with an outsourced device. So everything I'm doing is just say, hey lab, this is what's going on. Do X, Y, and Z, please. Vet, this is why we did this. This is how you do it. I personally am not doing the fabrication like that. That is out of my scope. I'm partnered with some really fantastic people, and any case that comes in, I'm pretty much just handing them, just saying, this is what we're doing. Like, you work your magic. Like, if something's not right, then I'll help them figure it out. But I'm almost the liaison in a fancy sense of just saying, we're taking this thing that's not brand new. We've got these designs that have been like tried and proven. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel, but let's, add some higher end like touches and customizations to these.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. What role do you think, this is usually yours question. I'm surprised you didn't jump in here. What role do you think the additive manufacturing or 3D printing plays into product design and maybe some stuff that is not necessarily you're able to do with traditional fabrication, but you are, so it may, open up other designs, other ideas, things that weren't possible before. What do you think?
Well, I am not the most educated person on this, but from what I understand in my bit of research on it, I think it's going to be great for several parts of this, not for all of it. Excuse me. The thing is, and you guys tell me, because, the additive manufacturing is not like, I know very little about that. I know that it happens. I've seen some of your LinkedIn stuff. Like, it's, that's about the extent of my exposure to that. I think that additive manufacturing could be really great for devices that are not contacting the ground, like knee bracing and elbow braces, and maybe parts and pieces like printing like a flexible inner liner for something would be great. And then even for wrist, it might be great. The carpets, the wrists and the front legs might be great. But when you get to the hind legs and you get to the ankle, there is so much torque on that I don't know if any material could withstand that. There's so much. So like, we're often 90 degrees off of like the ground reaction force vector at the ankle for an ankle. And you have to be able to change the paw segment. And these are dogs. So again, I don't know about the materials that you can use, but there's one company out there called Wimba that, their kind of claim to fame is they 3D print things, and their devices are pretty cool looking. But the problem is like, they're using some nylon material that's super strong, but it gets wet and then it's gross. It's dog hair and it slobbers and it's rough on them. So I think that there's definitely a way to integrate it. Are we there yet? I'm not quite sure. With me, absolutely not yet. And I would love to pick you guys' brain about it sometime. But I think down the line, it could be used, if not for the full devices, at least for components of it, or for like more temporary solutions. They'll get out of surgery and they'll be in, veterinarians use different kind of splinting systems, not so much a splint, but, they'll put a leg-shaped piece of plastic and wrap it up with vet wrap and some foam and just like use that as their post-op, immobilization. I think that could be replaced with a 3D printed device. Here's a cast of the leg. Let me just 3D print this really simple thing real quick, and use that instead of like a full orthosis with dynamic motion and tamaracks and all that. I think that for me in the future, that would probably be the next integration of that. as far as full braces, like that's going to be a lot of trial and error, just like I said, because dogs are so dynamic and messy. Like if they gain muscle, I need to be able to change it. And usually I'm not the one there. It's the veterinarians, things that are a little bit more accommodative tend to be easier for everyone. I guess that's something you'll have to tell me about.
Yeah, well, we will definitely share with you more offline. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the interesting things, just like what you said, the education around like the veterinarian side of things and just making sure that people stay safe. I would say yours and I feel very strongly in the similar sense that, if 3D printing is not your thing, you find somebody that does 3D printing and help it become your thing. And so I think that there's a lot of lack of education around the 3D printing, but we also know that there are serial private equity and VC guys, and for whatever reason, they get all the money and then they get all the press and they create these products that aren't that great and doing exactly the things that what you're saying. And that hurts the industry as a whole. I'm sure that you've had some pet braces and that have people have wounds and all that stuff. And it's like, where did you actually have this done? And it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing in the 3D printing world is I can't believe they're actually selling that as a solution or something to along those lines, or, why would you use those materials? And that's where it becomes really important. So, but yeah, happy to dive in the weeds there. Well, we're almost at time, but I was just wondering from your perspective, if somebody was interesting, like we're always trying to leave somebody with a little bit of nugget of wisdom. So if somebody's interested in the prosthetic and orthotic realm in the pet space, where would be a good place to start on their personal development? I mean, you've already mentioned, hey, you've got to know some people, get involved. But if somebody was like, hey, this is the direction that I want to go, and I need to do, this for the next couple of weeks to really study how animals move or something like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a very good, tough question. I mean, for right now, I think talking to someone that's doing it currently is the best way to get your foot in the door. I mean, you can always buy textbooks and look at the anatomy differences and understand the best first step. Like if, I would always say, like, feel free to reach out to me. Like I would like to help people learn and we could make it work in some way, shape, or form, and I'll have a course out eventually. But for right now, like if you're interested in it, try to find a rehab veterinarian in your area. And it's hard because it's few and far between, veterinarians that are busy doing this maybe do 2 a month. And there's not a whole lot of veterinarians that do it. So, but I would search around your area or ask me, like, is there anyone near me that is doing this? And I would just shadow a couple, kind of see what they're doing. You'll kind of pick up on where the blind spots are, and then that can help guide your study. Because, working with 4 legs versus 2 legs is not just twice as many legs. It's completely different. So watching someone that's doing it currently, kind of filling in the gaps. And then a good way to be integrated into the field might be, hey, I feel confident enough to do this casting. Do you want me to take it over for you in terms of working with the veterinarians? So fabrication is a separate part of that, but getting into the integrative, deciding this is an orthotic candidate or this is a prosthetic candidate, this is how we do the cast molding, this is how the range of motion limitations work. Like that would be my best suggestion, is to look at case studies online and try to find, it's usually like a very specialized veterinarian or a sports medicine veterinarian that's doing this, but there's at least a couple in every state. You might have to make a drive and it may be 4 hours one way to see a 30-minute case. And that's just kind of what it is. So getting exposure to that is just going to be through case studies and veterinarians at this point.
So, but I think the biggest takeaway is humans are different than dogs or animals. And it's important to know that and don't outkick your coverage. And there are people out there that are willing to help. So I think that's great.
All right. Thank you so much for being here, Brent. And thank you so much for being here, Danny, today.
Thank you guys for having me.
And thank you for listening to another episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast. Have a great day.